And I decided not to wait, but to maybe explain and exemplify my previous video talking about morality. Again, where am I leading with all of this? Eventually, I do want to analyze different countries. I do want to analyze, legislation, certain laws in Moldova, and certain, actions of let's say, our officials here, because again, the world is changing real fast, these last 2 months, and I think this is important. So coming back to this idea of morality, why am I, another reason why I'm bringing it up, of course, to analyze all of that, but I think if we understand this concept, then it will be much easier for us to fight against such things as manipulation and propaganda. I think one of my mottos in my life would be like, the fight against manipulation. Okay, propaganda is like, it's a form of that, but manipulation. It's basically when other people or certain laws or certain decisions, lead you towards just one certain action that this is the only right thing to do, and you must do it if there is no other way. Or when just people around you tell you that, or expect you to do certain things and tell you to do certain things. So I want to discuss also that, how moral it is. Back to to my definition of morality. So again, morality basically is defined by how much you stand to lose in a particular situation. Okay, what kind of things can we lose? I didn't mention it in the first video. Basically here you can use the hierarchy of Maslow's needs, but I would call them values or assets, because that's something that you can forfeit. Or we could simplify it to 3 basic things. I think fundamental is life, because that's how we build our experience. If we don't have that, if we lose that, we cannot even talk about things that are moral or immoral, right? The next level I would say is financial well-being, and maybe the third one is this level of self-actualization, but I would call it like democratic values and freedoms, because again, I do want to connect it later on to countries and their actions and different laws introduced. Let me again introduce maybe by another example, and based on that, there will be 2 conclusions. So imagine a situation: you're a strong young man, and in front of you there's a child, and for no obvious reason you punch the child in the face, right? I mean, you are not threatened in any way, and according to my definition, you stand nothing to lose in that particular situation. Well, maybe you disagreed on something, maybe just all of a sudden you just hit the child, right? Because you stand nothing to lose at all, that would be an extremely immoral behavior. And I would say a very similar situation, but in front of you, it's not a child, defenseless child, but you see a robber is waving a knife at you or a gun, right? And you punch that person. I mean, the same act, right? It's the same punching. It's you're the same personality, just 2 different situations in your life, but you act similarly. And that action, again, I conclude would be morally justified, absolutely, because you have to defend yourself, because you are about to lose a lot, possibly your life, right? At least well-being, but I'd argue even your life. So to similar situations, very different justifications, very different conclusions we come to as to morality of our action. Well, based on that simple example, I'd argue that, again, morality is individual. to the situation. So I'm not saying it's absolutely something abstract and subjective, no, but it's individual to the situation, because only you understand, or the other people involved, but those who are involved in the situation understand how much you stand to lose. And that's number one. And number two, maybe that's not so obvious, but again, referring to manipulation and propaganda and so on, unless you understand what a person stands to lose in a particular situation, it doesn't matter what they did, or it matters, but it matters little what they did, how they reacted. If you don't understand how much they stood to lose in that situation, then you cannot judge that person. And I think the second one is a big one here. So that means if we want to understand why this or that person reacted or acted in a certain way, we need to understand how much they could lose in a particular situation. Was it their life? Okay, then most of the actions, or maybe all of them, would be morally justified. That would be moral. That would be the right thing to do. Was it their well-being? Also very strong. Was it their certain freedoms? Or maybe there was nothing that they could lose in that particular situation, and they behaved in a certain way that badly affected another person, right? Then it would be considered absolutely immoral. Absolutely immoral and not the right thing. So again, this is extremely important because there is a lot of manipulation, and some people expect us to do certain things, not knowing what we stand to lose, or maybe knowing what we stand to lose, but still pushing us to certain actions. And we are, in that case, if we understand that we stand a lot to lose, we are totally and absolutely morally justified to behave in the way that would reduce the possible loss, that would eliminate the loss of our life, or would reduce the financial, like the loss of the financial well-being, or the loss of certain freedoms. And this is very important. And I think if we think about different situations in our life in this way, then we will be able to combat manipulation very often. And okay, propaganda maybe is harder. In many ways, it's easier. You just turn off the TV or your computer, or your smartphone, right? You just don't listen to that. But the manipulation that comes, from, let's say, the people around us, and again, I'll not forget here to mention, maybe from the state, from certain officials and so on. Why am I talking about this? Well, things could change for worse. I'm not saying they will in Moldova, and we could be faced with certain moral decisions. Like, for example, if we have mobilization in Moldova, what's the right thing? Do you go to the army, or you avoid that? In what ways, right? If we are attacked again, what do you do? Do you choose the side? Do you flee the country? Do you just keep on living your life, right? But again, if you're pushed to make a decision. So these are some huge questions. And in my next video, I think I will eventually get to the things that are happening in Ukraine. And I would argue, so a bit of a preview, I would argue here in that video that Ukraine is by far, and many people will not agree with me, but by far is more morally justified by the response, but because they're trying to protect themselves, And then we'll discuss about, the second place and maybe some other countries or institutions that cannot be morally justified in any way, who have nothing to lose. So again, remember, we are talking about what a country, doesn't matter, country or individual, what a country has to lose. And I will argue that there are certain international institutions or countries that have very little to use. Again, it does depend on the current situation, right? So that's why it's important to think, okay, the beginning of the war, right? Then this event happened. Who's justified? Was this the right thing or the right response, and so on? Then another event. So we're not talking about creating a certain opinion, and then no matter what happens, we just stick to that opinion. I would say this is not right. I mean, might not be patriotic, some people say, maybe like flipping sides and so on. But I think we need to go event by event, situation by situation, because again, I did put that in the definition of morality, the way I see it, and I think it's extremely important. That's why we can't make these blanket statements that this person is good, that person is bad, but different people behave differently in certain situations, more often, less often. That's already another issue. So yeah, I will argue that at this point, Ukraine is morally justified by far than any other country, because they're trying to defend themselves, to protect themselves. And well, it's a war, so any means basically is justified. However you do this, because you're surviving. Again, when I talk about the country, I do talk about the people, right? So people are dying and no one wants to die, so they have to defend themselves. Well, let's see where we go with this analysis.